all inside. I just want to welcome everybody, and we want to get the show on the road because we do have guests tonight. And so I want to get through a couple of our normal housekeeping things, and then we'll go right to our speakers tonight. So Drew, let's go right to you with the minutes.
Well, I think we're up to date on approval for the minutes that I had circulated through the May meeting. The June minutes are not completed. So I have to follow up with someone on that since I was not in attendance.
And I will add that I have not uploaded the latest minutes, so I'll try to get that done today.
Okay, great, thank you. So we did record it, Drew, the
okay, good.
meeting for you so that you could view it and hear what happened, if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll get them circulated by email
Okay, great.
to the board.
Thank you. Bob, anything with treasurer's report before we move on?
Unfortunately, I was on an unexpected trip today, so I didn't get anything together for the meeting tonight. But I can report from the membership committee that we uploaded all the members as of the 1st of June to the new software. And now we have to update it with people who renewed in June and July. And as of the 1st of June, we had 300 paying members and 37 lapsed members on the books. So we made significant progress on that. Julie and I hope to have the rest of updated by the end of the month and be able to maybe take it live at the beginning of August would be our schedule.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, did you send Mark Squilla?
Mark absolutely knows of this.
No, I know, but he's trying to get in and he doesn't. He's saying he needs a passcode.
I didn't.
Did anyone
It's
send
just,
him?
it's all caps, it's Wash Square West Civic, so WSWCA, but you do have to do it in all caps.
What else has like step to the plate on that side? He's gonna get primary.
It's Wash West. Yes, spell it out, or is it just the initials?
Just the initials, all caps.
All right, I just sent that to him. I didn't know if you sent him a link or not, Jonathan, for the meeting.
I mean, just a typical one that we always use.
Okay, you did send
While
it.
we're waiting. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're waiting. We're to get. Okay. Are
You're
we ready
waiting-
to start?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. So while we're waiting for him to start, I can at least speak to the process so far, and before he's already good. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. My name is Jonathan Breaux. I'm the chair of the zoning committee. Our next presentation is going to be with Ian Litwin and Jack Convisor of the Planning Commission, and then Councilman Squilla will be present as well to speak about the remapping of the Washington Square, potential remapping of Washington Square West. Just to describe what's happened so far. So in September of 2019, we'd actually had a couple of meetings on the remapping. We'd actually got to the point where we're probably going to vote on it, and then COVID happened, and then it kind of sat dormant for a long time. Sometime toward the end of 2022, there was interest in getting the remapping process started again. So we had two presentations in January, one in person, one via Zoom, where the Planning Commission presented essentially the same map that had been presented 3 years prior, other than lots that had changed in the prior 3 years were updated. So for example, the 12th Street gym site was changed because it had the high rise going and similar sites to that. Since the January meeting, what we've done is any emails that we received or anything that was stated in either of the two meetings or anything that has gone to any of the Wash West Civic Association emails has been sent to the Planning Commission and to Councilman Squilla for their consideration on comments to the proposed changes. The Civic Association did not opine on anyone's suggestions, so they were just kind of sent straight forward, and the Planning Commission and the councilman, consider them as they will. I want to say about a month and a half ago, the Planning Commission, Councilman Squilla walked the neighborhood, specifically the northwest corner of our neighborhood, because there was a lot of concern about that one, especially the downzoning of several of the properties. The original intent was for the community to be part of that walkthrough. Unfortunately, scheduling just really didn't allow that to happen. Councilman Squilla can speak to that if he has any further comments on that. And then what we also did is at the last meeting in January, there was some concerns about that there had been proper advertising of the meeting. So for this meeting, we mailed out mailers to any property that had been affected that is being proposed for remapping. That list was provided by the Planning Commission. Just to note, there were two lists that were used. One, the list was from January, and it was an updated list in May. The list in January had a handful of properties that are no longer being affected. So there's probably a few people that might have gotten notices from us saying your property is being affected. And I would rather be cautious to the extent of saying someone who's getting affected and they're not, than the counter to that. And now we'll start the presentation. A few rules. So first, let's our presenters present their entirety before we have any questions. If you have a simple question, one that can just be answered, we would prefer that it goes in the chat. If you have comments that you want to speak publicly, you can send an email to zoning@washwestcivic.org, and that is my email, and I can forward it to Councilman Squilla and the Planning Commission. Ian and Jack, I'm sure, will add their emails as well in the chat room. And then after, if there's something you really need to speak to them directly, we'll unmute you and you can feel free to ask any questions or comments. So Ian and Jack, please take it away. I don't know if Councilman Squilla has joined yet to confirm.
He's trying to. I'm on the phone with him.
Okay, well, I mean, if nothing, I think Ian and Jack, you can still go, because really Councilman Squilla is to speak about the legislative process after, once this has been started.
Yeah, sure thing. Much of this presentation is going to look like the one from last time anyway, and the councilman was there. I'm here from the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. My name, for those who don't know me, I'm Ian Litwin. I am the Central District Planner, and I work in the Art and Design Division. I have with me Jack Convisor and Stephanie Pennypacker. They work for me too. So Stephanie's going to be taking notes, and Jack will be here to answer questions in the chat. I'm going to share my screen. So if anyone was at the last meeting, which was in person in January, I think it was very cold. Much of this is going to look similar, and then towards the end, the maps may look a little different. The changes we made were in the northwest corner, like Jonathan was saying, and I'll outline those when we get there. So this is a zoning remapping proposal for the area bounded by Walnut Street, 8th Street, South Street, and Broad Street. And this is what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what is zoning. I'm sure a lot of you understand the process, but for those who don't, it's a brief overview of what zoning does and does not do. We'll talk about zoning remapping progress in Center City, and then we'll talk about what the zoning districts are that you're going to see on these maps. And the colors associated with them. It's not, everything about each zoning district, but it gets the general idea across. I'll show you what the existing zoning map looks like. Worth noting that much of the zoning in Washington Square West has existed as long as zoning has existed and hasn't been changed. So the reasons why some things are zoned the way they are may be beyond me, but a lot of this has just always been that way. So we'll go over what the goals are of this process, and then we'll talk about the proposed zoning and specifically the revisions made. And then we'll talk about the next steps and also some resources for you to dig into this with a little more detail. And hopefully the councilman will be around at the end to talk about the legislation. So what is zoning? Everyone who owns land. Yes.
I'm sorry. Councilman is on now, just so you know.
Okay. Hello, councilman. So everyone who owns land, a set of property rights comes with that land. And zoning is used to regulate some of those property rights, specifically land use, height, and massing. There's a lot of things that zoning cannot regulate. Those include construction techniques, the issue of renting of units, trash, crime, and property management. And there's two types of zoning proposals that you'll see in Philadelphia. The first is a by right development. This means that a building project fits all the requirements of the zoning code and the property zoning classification. In this case, there's no variances or special exceptions needed. Therefore, the project gets a permit and they proceed through the building permit process. The second is a variance. These are projects that, as proposed, require relief from one or more requirements of the zoning code. In a city like Philadelphia, we get a lot of variances because we have a lot of old buildings, oddly shaped lots, old zoning, and you as an RCO, you see all these projects before they go to the zoning board, and variances are granted by the zoning board of adjustment only after a community meeting has occurred. There's two different kinds of variances. There's use variances and dimensional variances. So this map shows citywide remapping progress as of this past January. Everything in purple is land that has been remapped, usually through a community process, and every one of these was a bill of city council. Everything in orange here are things that are in progress, where we're actively meeting with communities, and everything in light blue here are things that have been proposed by the Planning Commission in the comprehensive plan and have not been passed through legislation. So starting in about 2013, after the Central District Plan was completed, we did a series of remappings in Center City. This progress slowed due to COVID, but now we're picking it back up. So we remapped either portions or entire neighborhoods, including Northern Liberties, Old City, Bella Vista, Callow Hill, Chinatown North, East Callow Hill, Logan Square, Queen Village, West Poplar, Francisville, East Poplar, Rittenhouse Square, south of Spruce Street, and Society Hill. So the alphanumeric map symbols you're going to see, things like RSA5, RM1, these are intended to provide a general indication of a district's primary intended character and the building types allowed. The number following the dash is a relative indicator of the density and intensity of development allowed. Some districts are controlled by height and others are controlled by something called floor area ratio. So floor area ratio is a ratio determined by dividing the gross floor area of the buildings in the lot divided by the area of the lot. So all three examples here, the 1-story building, 2-story building, and 4-story buildings have a 100% FAR because they have the same amount of area, floor area as the lot itself. So much of the northern half of Wash West is controlled by floor area ratio zoning districts, and we'll talk about them in a minute. So on the height districts, you're going to see a light yellow color. This is residential single family attached. This is essentially your classic Philadelphia row home, 3 stories, 38 feet, 1 dwelling unit. And then you're going to see RM1. In Center City, these will often look like row homes, but essentially these are multi-unit residential buildings with the same 38-foot height limit. And then there's some residential districts that are regulated by floor area ratio and not height. These include RM2 and RM4. RM2 is a row home scale building. RM4 is a low-rise 350% FAR, and then RMX3 is a residential mixed-use district. It's very similar to CMX3. There's a very limited amount of commercial on the ground floor, so essentially it's an urban apartment building with a small commercial space. You won't see much of these in your district, and in many cases we're going to get rid of those. And then there's some commercial districts. These are the lower scale commercial districts that are denoted by CMX 1, 2, and 2.5. CMX 1 is a commercial district where ground floor commercial space is optional. And then it's a single or multifamily above that based on adjacent zoning. CMX 2 is a typical Philadelphia corner store or commercial corridor where ground floor commercial space is required, and it's multifamily above that, also 38 feet. And then there's another district called CMX 2.5 where ground floor commercial space is required and multifamily above that. And it's a 55-foot.
I'm going to zoom in. I'll put it back.
These are all the same color on the zoning map because of their similar character. And then in floor area ratio, these are CMX 3, 4, and 5. These are the big commercial districts that you see in Center City. CMX 3 and 4 are very similar. It's a 500% FAR, and there's a bunch of bonuses that you can use as a developer to add to that. And then CMX 5 is the highest zoning district we have. There's a 1200 FAR, and there's a number of zoning bonuses for that too. And I'll talk about those on this slide here. So these are the main zoning districts that we see in Center City that are your typical Center City buildings. So on the left here, you'll see the base floor area ratio. Everything here is 500% except for CMX 5, which is 1200%. And then depending on the number, The higher you go,
Yes.
the more zoning bonuses you can get, and zoning bonuses are for things like mixed income housing, green building, underground parking. These get you various density bonuses depending on where your building is. There's also an open space
I'm on a
district.
Zoom call right now with the city. Can you?
Thank you. There's also an open space district. These are green on the map. And currently zoned for open space in Wash West is Washington Square, Con Park, Seeger Park, Star Garden, and Addison Street Park. There's 3 open spaces that are not zoned for open space, and we will proposing to change that. These include the South Street Community Garden, the Waverly Street Community Garden, and Sartain Garden. There's also something called zoning overlays. We're not really talking about that here, but in general, zoning overlays contain additional controls with supplement-based zoning requirements. So you are in a Center City Overlay District. It's denoted by a /CTR. It contains additional controls for things like height, building setbacks, supplemental use controls, parking and loading controls, signs, special review areas, including art commission review, and additional bulk and massing controls for high-rise buildings. So this map, and I know we don't have it in much detail, this is just the limitations of Zoom, but this is the current zoning in Wash West. Again, the light yellow and orange are residential districts, and as you get into the darker reds, those are the higher commercial districts, and the green are open space. So we have 5 goals for this remapping process. The first is to protect traditional commercial corridors, and some of this is to focus commercial on the more viable corridors. These include Antique Row. Much of Antique Row is zoned for CMX1, which does not require a ground floor commercial use. So, for example, in Antique Row, we are proposing to rezone much of Antique Row to CMX2. 13th Street, we want to protect the scale and vitality of that district. Number 2 is to better manage the transition between the neighborhood scale to the south and east and the commercial scale to the north and west. And this is something that was contested at the last meeting of how much should we be upzoning and downzoning things, and I'll show you what we came up with. Like Jonathan said, we walked a lot of the blocks around 13th and Walnut on those smaller blocks with the councilman and the director of planning and development to see where we could maintain the high-rise commercial zoning and where it was more appropriate to downzone. And then we want to encourage appropriate development on vacant or underdeveloped lots, protect row home fabric and single-family homes, and correct zoning to reduce nonconformities. So this is the proposed zoning map. Everything outlined in black is a proposed change, and then everything else is proposed to remain the same if it's not outlined. So you can see the changes are primarily located in the northwest quadrant, south of Walnut Street and east of Broad Street. But there are other changes, specifically Antique Row, and there's a few changes on South Street. So since January, we made a number of changes. Properties fronting on the south side of Walnut Street are all either remaining or are proposed to become CMX5. This is the highest density district, but this would make it consistent with what's zoned on the north side of Walnut Street. Properties fronting on the north of Locust, east of 13th, become CMX3. So in the previous proposal, these were proposed to be CMX4. So in exchange for upzoning Walnut Street, we're further downzoning south of there. And there's a number of small row homes on the smaller streets, and those are proposed to become RM1. And then properties within the block bounded by 13th, Chancellor, Camac, and St. James Street also become CMX3, with exceptions for row homes on smaller lots. And this is a zoom in showing the difference. The top map was the proposed map we showed in January. You can see everything from Locust to Walnut, from Juniper to 11th was proposed to be either remain or become CMX4, with the exception of the site where the 12th Street Gym is, or was. And in the bottom map, you can see the CMX5 zoning kind of skirts the properties fronting Walnut Street, and then south of there, things are further downzoned to CMX3, and then there's a number of small homes on St. James and Chancellor Streets, which are proposed to become RM1. And I know that we didn't go into full detail here because we're limited by Zoom, but you'll see on the next slide, we have an interactive map you can use to search by address to see what the proposed zoning is. There's also a zoning quick guide, which goes through all of the zoning requirements of the zoning code in a graphical form. I will share those with you on the next slide. I think Jonathan might have already shared those. So the next steps in this process are to draft a bill of council, and that is something we would do with the councilman. And then after that, the bill would go through the typical council process where it's introduced to committee. Planning commission reviews it, and then there's a rules committee hearing. Bill's read twice, and then it goes to vote and to the mayor to sign the bill. So there's an interactive map. The address is here. There's also a QR code. On this map, there's a slider where you can see the current and proposed zoning. You could also search by address. This is the same link as the map from January. It's just updated data. And then the zoning quick guide. This is a guide we put together that details all of the requirements of the many zoning districts without having to read the zoning code itself. The link is here. There's also a QR code. This link and QR code has not changed since January. And that's all I have for the presentation portion. We'd be glad to answer questions. I know it's hard to get into detail on a Zoom meeting. So I'm going to leave it up to Jonathan to moderate this portion of the meeting, and also the councilman himself who's here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Squilla. Before we take individual questions, you want to kind of quickly talk through the legislative process just so people understand how that'll go forward? I believe he's there. Did we lose the councilman? Looks that way. Well, while we're waiting for him to get back, hopefully we'll take some questions. So Chip Ellis, I see your hand raised.
Hey, thanks a lot. And thanks for the presentation and for meeting tonight. One of the things that I noticed that it hasn't been highlighted is south of Spruce Street, between Camac and 12th. That whole area has been residential except for the corner properties having commercial on the first floor. And I noticed that that has all been changed to commercial in the proposal. And that seems to have an impact on the small blocks south of Spruce there. And I really think that it should stay residential. I don't understand why we would switch that to commercial.
What
Which
blocks
block
are you talking about specifically?
The block between 12th and Camac, between Spruce and Cypress.
Okay. You talking about this block
It's been a
here?
residential block. I've lived here for over 30 years,
Yeah, you're talking about the 1200 block of Spruce on the south side?
going all the way to Cypress.
Okay, yeah, so the corners are proposed to remain commercial,
Right.
but the center of the block is proposed to become multifamily residential zoning. So currently, this is all zoned.
What is that pink? Isn't that commercial pink?
Yeah, that's the current zoning. The proposed zoning is only keeps the commercial on the two corners.
Okay, I thought it was opposite. Okay, thank you.
No problem. I
That's what this is
switched.
for.
I switched my screen share to the interactive map.
That makes
hopefully it
sense.
can help us answer questions. Sure.
So, I apologize for pronouncing this incorrectly. Ram Krishnan, if you have a question.
Thanks so much for the presentation, guys. So I own 1342 Cypress. So if you zoom to Cypress Street between Juniper and 13th Street, you will notice so we are currently zoned CMX4, all of the red that you're seeing.
Mhm.
And I don't know why my property was zoned to a pink in the middle, which is very weird because all the buildings around us are going to be taller in the future. And the whole reason of us holding on to this property was the idea that one day, if somebody bought it, they would consolidate the land and they would build something there, because the University of the Arts dorm is behind us, and
Mhm.
the front looks like it's CMX4. So I don't know the reasoning for changing just that one little spot there. I would
Yes.
request to kind of keep it as CMX4 if it's possible, just from a
Okay.
future point of view.
We can take a look at this and revisit it.
Hey,
before
guys.
we come back.
Ian, I'm sorry.
Okay. The
Somehow
councilman
I
is
got
here.
lost. As soon as I was asked to speak, for some reason I got kicked off. But I don't know if you talked about the process. The process is once the community and planning all has an agreement on the remapping and planning drafts the legislation, it is sent to my office. Once we get it, we introduce the legislation. There will then be a public hearing in the Rules Committee. That hearing will most likely be in person in City Council. And then if it comes out of committee, that would then be given to all members of council for a vote. If it passes if it has 9 votes, it passes and then goes on to the mayor. If the mayor signs it, it then becomes law. Hopefully that'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Councilman Squall.
Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem at all. All right, looking through all.
What area are we looking at now? What is this? Oh, 13th and
This is just the 1300 block of Cypress Street. We had a question specifically about that block, so we'll revisit the recommendations on that block, similar to how we revisited some of the other recommendations, and we'll see where it lands.
Thanks, Ian.
what was it? What was it, Ian?
So this block is it's all currently CMX4, and we made a recommendation to remap some of the smaller properties at front on Cypress. Sorry for my zoom to CMX2. And one of the owners of the properties would like us to revisit that
To
recommendation.
CMX2?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
There's a question in the chat. Jefferson currently has 2 parks on Locust in the 900 block and 1000 block. Is there any way to preserve them?
Yes. So the city has something called special purpose institutional zoning that many universities use. The issue with Jefferson is that as currently exists in the zoning code, they have too much floor area ratio and not enough open space to qualify for that zoning. So much of Jefferson is simply zoned CMX5, CMX4, RMX3, things of that nature. And most of those open spaces are not on their own parcels. So it's and in order to zone something for open space, we would need the permission of the landowner. So one of the things we did, other than properties on Walnut Street, was we didn't change any of the hospital zoning in this proposal. That would be a process we would have to go through with the university to get them under an institutional zoning category.
Thank you. Next question. What is the change to the Lennox building on 13th Street in Spruce, and what is the impact?
Sorry. What's the address? The exact address? I'm sorry.
The Lennox building.
250 South 13th Street.
Thank you.
Okay, we're proposing to change that block from CMX5 to CMX4. And it's worth knowing that any building that is, exists legally at the time of the zoning change is not affected by it. So this would only affect new proposals and new buildings. And the difference between CMX 5 and 4 is simply one of floor area ratio. They both allow the same uses. It's just that CMX 5 is the highest possible zoning category we have, and CMX 4 is one step down from there.
You're saying that whatever they are current owners, they will stay that.
And any building that exists legally would, zoning is only day forward. So new building proposals would have to follow the new zoning requirements, but anything that already exists isn't really affected.
That would mean that if somebody had a CMX 5 and you wanted to change it to a CMX 4, and then they wanted to sell it, they'd have to sell it as a CMX 4.
So the zoning stays with the parcel. So it's the zoning is independent of the ownership. So I guess the answer to your question is yes. So if the parcel is zoned CMX4 and you sell it, it's still 4. It doesn't change through a land transaction.
Okay, because I have a building on the 1200 block of St. James that is currently a CMX 5. And I think you're proposing a CMX 4 for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Why is that?
So Camac, Chancellor, and St. James are very narrow streets. And as we've seen with the 12th Street Gym proposal, CMX5 allows for a lot of density on these streets. So the idea here was to keep parcels with frontage on Walnut at CMX5, and then parcels back from there would get zoned down to CMX4 to reduce the height of new proposals. I understand how as a property owner that would affect you, but that's the proposal.
Yeah, but if you understand as a property owner,
Yes.
that affects me. When people buy properties, they look at the zoning and what it is. So that's put into the equation of how much you pay and buying it. So by changing it, I don't think that it is fair to the owner who based purchase price on what the zoning was and would.
Ian or Councilman, are there any further comments on that? Or I mean, I guess it was something that we'll take under
Yeah,
assessment as
I
you
would
look at the map.
ask if you have a property you own and you're concerned with the change. I would ask you to put the address in the chat. So I think what we've done previously in other neighborhoods. So remapping in Center City is very hard because there's a lot of parcels that have a lot of value, and some of that is attached to the zoning. So generally, in order to get to a consensus and get a bill of council, in the absence of remapping, we simply leave the zoning as is, and I think in some cases that might happen. There's a lot of sort of large landowners in Center City who have plans that we may not know about, or recently purchased parcels. So that's something we'd have to work out with the councilman.
Yeah, Ian, can we
yeah.
get a list of the properties of concern and then make that list so we know what they are, and then look at them, see if there's any proposed plans for those properties? Obviously, we don't want to get into taking and stuff like that, but I mean, we could review them if we get a list, and maybe the list could come through Wash West or through planning so that we can look at that.
It will, Councilman. As last time we took record of any comments, and we'll send them to you of any concern.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Going just through a couple questions. So there's a question, 1203 Rodman and the two properties on the northwest corner of 12th and the Rodman. And I know that one, Ian, it's a block where made like sort of a 12th and Rodman. It's a C-shaped kind of zoning where it's an RM1 and RSA 5. So 12th and Rodman. Well, further down, just south of Pine. There is it. Or south of, you might see. There we are. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So that's the church. I thought we would get questions about this. So that's St. Peter Claver. So because it's a historic building, the existing buildings on that site are allowed to develop according to the CMX3 requirements, despite their existing zoning. However, any development on empty land there, specifically the parking lots, would have to follow the underlying zoning. It's currently zoned RSA 5, which means they could only build one unit on that space. So the proposal is to change the zoning to RM1, which would match the other parts of the block. Any development on that parcel would have to be approved by the historical commission anyway.
Thank you. There's a question regarding 1200 block of Rod Lombard, which I think is the same site. There's a question, what does CMX2 mean for Waverly Street between 10th and 11th? And I think while Ian's looking that up, I mean, CMX2 requires ground floor commercial. So these are some of the areas we were trying to, it's really more for the Pine Street frontage than the Waverly Street frontage, but they're through street properties.
So currently, from Pine to Waverly, it's zoned CMX1 all the way back to Waverly. This is problematic for Pine Street because we don't have to have commercial on the ground floor, and then for some of the Waverly Street properties that are strictly residential. So the proposal is to zone anything with frontage on Pine to CMX2, and then parcels that only front Waverly and don't have any Pine Street frontage would be RM1 or RSA 5, depending on where they're located.
Thank you. Okay, there's a question regarding the zoning change for St. Peter Claver Center and 12th and Lombard, which you just answered. I guess there's a question, zoning changes, will they increase or decrease overall mandatory parking? And I guess in general, Ian, as density goes up, parking requirements tend to go up, but I don't know if there's a more
So
specific.
Jack is typing an answer to the parking question, but essentially the parking ratios in CMX 3, 4, and 5 are all the same, where we don't require parking for commercial uses, but for residential uses, we require 3 spaces for every 10 units. One could also park off-site within 1,000 feet of the proposal.
There's a comment, will we get input from the community on the proposed properties are in question? Yes, as mentioned, all comments will go to planning and councilman.
Well, sorry, Jonathan, it's Marissa. More specifically, so these are this is the presentation, and what is it going to be such that people that have concerns about their property are going to be able to kind of, make a deal behind the scenes that they can change the zoning without going through the process again?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to reiterate that, a lot of the changes came from an initial discussion with, the community, and especially the downzoning ones, which we understand are potentially problematic for owners, but there should be some discussion, with the community at large as to why, this downzoning was considered, and then there'll have to be a discussion to balance those two sides of the opinion up. There's a comment, 1309 to 1315 locus is being downzoned from CMX 5 to 4, while the remaining adjacent buildings are CMX 5. There's a curious question as to why that one was seemingly singled out. I think it's good. And I think it goes down to your same point of trying to transition down to the neighborhood, but
yeah.
Basically, we have a CMX 5 going to 4, going to smaller scale residential was the goal. Let's see, Jack, parking ratios for CMX 3, 4, and 5 zone properties are essentially for housing. Okay, he's responding. Jack's still responding to the parking question. There's a comment, understand that St. Peter Claver rezoning, but again, 1203 Rodman does not need to be changed, nor do the other 2 residential properties. Comment, can you explain why there are several properties at 13 Juniper being downzoned from CMX5 to CMX4. And again, I think it's the same answer of trying to have a gradual change in scale from going from the high density commercial district into the residential district. There's a general comment of down zoning, which just basically means if you're going from CMX5 to CMX4, it means going from something of higher density or higher size or to something of lower density or lower scale and size. As it relates to St. Peter Claver rezoning, with the church parking lot require historic commission approval or just the building itself? I believe right now the church and the school are independently registered. It would be worth noting that the entire neighborhood is being considered to becoming a historic district. But in my understanding, that CMX3 use zoning is only for existing buildings. So that vacant lot would not be eligible for the CMX3 zoning. It would fall under whatever.
Yeah. I can expand on that a bit. So in the zoning code, we have exceptions for historic structures, which essentially assumes CMX3 zoning for that structure. So in this case, the church building and the rectory, the existing buildings on the lot that are listed on the register, within the existing building envelope, could develop as if they were zoned CMX3. However, any new construction on the parking lot would need to be reviewed by the historical commission, and that would have to comply with the underlying zoning, which is why we proposed instead of RSA 5 to be RM1. And historically, that parking lot had row houses that don't appear to have been part of the church complex, so that's precedent for construction on that lot. So historically, it was never an open yard. So the historical commission would generally be inclined to approve development there, but the design would have to be approved by the historical commission.
Excuse me, one more comment. Just to be clear, I would ask that the property at 1219 to 1229 St. James Street stays at CMX5. I would please ask that it stays that way. It would not be fair to lower it to CMX4 as the building was purchased with CMX5 in mind, and the building's value based on that, ergo the real estate tax has been paid based on that as well. Thank you.
Understood.
Again,
Yeah.
I think Bob, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, John, the questions that the Rodman Street neighbors are asking about is if you zoom in farther, there's two residential properties adjacent to the church rectory that are scheduled to be rezoned, and they face 12th Street, but they look like if you zoom in, they're two separate lots, and so that's the question is why are they being rezoned?
Okay, that's it. We can take a look at that.
Yeah, they're existing RSA 5. There's two vertical properties or so that face 12th that are being rezoned with the church property, and the neighbors are asking why they were included. Is there any reason to change them, to take them from RSA 5 to RM1?
Are they both being used for single family dwellings now?
I think they're both the neighbors down at that end of the block would know better, but I think they're both rental properties. I don't know if they're single family or they might be multi-family residential.
Yeah, so
already.
I think the idea here was to make the zoning consistent across 12th Street. So if you look, the current zoning here and the proposed zoning makes it consistent across the street and keeps the single family zoning on the narrower street, but we can look at those two properties.
Thank you. That's all I have for comments in the chat, and I don't see any other hands raised. So as mentioned, if you have other, one more popping down. Okay, this is again reiterating the issue about 1309 to 1315 as it impacts potential sale. And again, that will be stated. The entire chat will be sent to the councilman and planning commission for their concern. And to the point brought up by Marissa, there should be a manner in which there can be public dialogue as to why some of these down zonings were originally wanted by the public. So we'll get those comments to the councilman and to the planning commission as well.
On the down zonings, in 2012, 2013, as part of the city's comprehensive plan, we did the central district plan for all of Center City. And the idea of that general down zoning was in that plan. Some of that, some examples of why is the Jewelers Row proposal, the 12th Street Gym. Some of these CMX 5 buildings in Wash West are big. I can see from a landowner standpoint why. I would say the amount of down zoning left on the current map is about maybe 10% of the original proposal. So it keeps getting chipped away, and I know it's very hard to down zone properties, specifically in Center City, which is why when I shared the neighborhoods we've remapped, they tend to be on the edges. We never remapped, Market East or Rittenhouse Square north of Spruce Street, just because it's high stakes real estate. So we will look at all of those, and by the time we get to a bill, we hope to have as much consensus as possible. But the genesis of this was the Central District Plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission in 2013.
Thank you. So with that, again, if you have further comments, you can either send them to myself at zoning@washwestcivic.org, which I just added in the chat. You can send it to ian.litwin@villa.gov. And anything that's sent to me will go to Planning Commission and Councilman Scola. As mentioned before, we'll have at least one more meeting on this discussion. We are not certain what the format will be. We'll follow up with Ian and the councilman on what would be the most appropriate. And we'll consider comments, or they will consider, I should say, comments that came from the community, and then further discussion. With that, Ian or Councilman Squill, do you have any final remarks on this? Ian, are you all set? Any final comments?
John, I don't have any final comments. I'm looking forward to working with everybody and hearing the concerns and figuring out a final plan that could then get planning to work on legislation and move forward.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, and Jonathan, if you think we need to have another in-person meeting, I think we're fine with that. It's hard to get into a lot of detail on Zoom.
Understood. So after this, we'll figure out to gauge the public response, and we'll follow up with an additional meeting. Probably won't be for Councilman Squill. I mean, council goes out of session pretty soon, so I mean, it's probably a fall meeting, the next one at this point.
Yeah, we don't go back in the session. We can't introduce anything anyway until mid-September.
Right.
Around the 7th. So right. We have time.
And again, there's no rush to this at all. So the goal is to have, proper dialogue with the community, planning, and the council, city council.
All right, great. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you. I put my email and phone number in the chat, and we'll copy all the chat comments, and then anything that we get, we'll come back to the community with an update.
Thank you. Okay, for everyone on the call, so at this point, we're going to go into our regular Civic Association call. We're going to talk about various other Civic Association things. We welcome you all to stay, but we will not feel sad if you leave us, because we understand this
Take that back, Jonathan.
mean.
We will feel sad if you leave. We need all the community members at all the meetings all the time, so that everybody is informed, so we don't have to send letters by mail to
He
get
was not
people
calling me,
to the
did they?
meeting.
Did you try to get him to call you?
Yeah.
We'd also love all of you
What's
to
that?
join as members if you aren't already members, and if your membership
Can I
is
check?
you or lapsed, if you could
You were
renew
just on the
that, we
community
would
meeting,
very
weren't
much
you?
appreciate it. The more
Hey,
members,
Harvey,
we
you're
have,
not
the more
muted.
member dollars we
I tried to
have,
get
the
him to-
more we can do for you. Okay, don't leave. So we're having a Wash West Bike Day this Sunday, the 16th of July. It's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Con Park. I'm just gonna put it out there, Tammy, before anybody else leaves, because we want you to come. We want you to meet all the wonderful organizations that we've got coming to table at this fair. We're going to have a representative of Vision Zero. So that's our city safety plan for people who are walking and biking. And we want, this is a great opportunity for you to go meet these people in person, someone who works for and with the city. Tell them what you think, what you see, what you want to see in this city. We're going to have representatives from Indigo. They can help you learn how to get onto an Indigo bike. If you sign up with them at their table, you can get a free month of Indigo rides. We're going to have representatives from the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. If you're new to cycling in the city, if you're interested in cycling in this city, talk to them. They've got all the deeds. They run all kinds of wonderful programs. For city cycling, for cycling outside the city, group rides, youth cycling, women's events. Get involved. We're also going to have, fun stuff for the kids. Bring your kids over and bring their bikes too. You can, yes, great bike path maps, Chip. We bring the kids too, bring the bikes. You can decorate your bikes. You can do some fun art and craft projects with Art Bike. And we're going to have some painting, some things you can take home with you. You can make a license plate for your bike. And at 1:15, all the kiddos can line up at Con Park. And kiddos is anybody. If you're a kiddo, you're a kiddo. It doesn't matter how old you really are. We're going to have a police escorted bike parade just from Con Park over to Seeger Park. It's about 2.5 blocks for all our smallest riders. And I said 1:15, that's at 1 o'clock. At 1:15, anybody else who wants to ride, bigger riders, more experienced riders, but of any level, we're going to have a group ride. Bring your own bike or rent one from Indigo. We've got a great route around the neighborhood. How many miles is it, Russell? I forget, but
it's like 2 miles in. Maybe.
And if you've never done a group ride before, it can be a really empowering way to get on your bike and get around the city. We highly recommend it. What else am I forgetting? We're also wash your bike at the Wash West Bike Wash. We're going to have water. We're going to have soap. We're going to have sponges. All you apartment dwellers rejoice. Bring your bike out, clean it up. I know it's gross. And you can meet us, the Washington Square West Civic Association. Come talk to us about what the heck are we doing here? We're doing all these things. We're hosting meetings. We're hosting bike days. We're doing all this stuff. We need you to be involved. And hopefully we're going to have Friends Con Park out there as well. You can talk with them. Okay. Is that good? What? Anything else?
All right, Katie, you got it. You got it in. You only lost 9 people.
Really?
That. Yeah.
All right. But the rest of you will be there. I'll see you Sunday.
Okay, it's on Sunday, everybody. Sunday. Is it rain or shine?
It's yes. I mean, if it's like pouring rain, nothing's happening. But there is no rain date. So.
Okay, good. All right, so it's not going to rain.
It's not going to rain.
Right.
It's going to wait till 4 o'clock and rain.
Perfect. Katie, while since you started, you might as well finish. Let's talk about our night out for Wash West.
It is a project that is in its less than infancy. It is still in the womb. We are going to have a night out for Wash West, hot summer nights. We're going to do it sometime in late August on a yet to be determined date, unless Tammy has something she wants to tell us. And it's going to be a fun night out for everybody. Get out in the streets in the dark at night, feel safe with your neighbors, and do it a little later in the evening so it's a little cooler. We're going to try, everything is pending, but the goal is to have food trucks, arts and crafts vendors, movie for the kids. Maybe we'll have an open fire hydrant. Maybe we'll have some live music. It's a great opportunity to come out and meet your neighbors, get some good food, have some fun, cool off a little bit. We're planning for like 6 to 10 or 12 p.m. TBD. And somewhere in the neighborhood, we're hoping to be able to work with Jefferson University / hospital and use some of their green space, but all is yet to be determined. We don't have a meeting. Wash West does not have a regular board meeting in August, so you won't hear this announcement again. So you're going to have to keep your eyes on the e-post and our social media to find out exactly what the date is and what the deal is.
Yes, so I just want to iterate that this, we received a grant from
Ben
my-
Waxman's office.
in regards to doing this night out. We're trying to, as the city is trying to get people to be outside at night over the summer to make our neighborhoods safer and meet each other more since COVID. You know, no one's been out and about, and we're hoping that this new event, which we've never done before, but we are excited to be putting this on, has the participation of everyone in the community. So we're also going to want to have some of the stores who are in our community be involved with this as well. So as soon as we hear back from Jefferson in regards to the space, we'll have more information moving forward. So I'm hoping to hear back this week in regards to it. So stay tuned. But yes, what Katie said is keep watching social media, keep watching our e-post as well as our website for more information in regards to this big event. It's going to be the biggest event that Wash West Civic has ever put on. So stay tuned for that. Katie, anything else that you have going on that you want to say?
No, that is all that we have for now, except for we have applied for one other grant opportunity. We are still waiting to be confirmed about, hopefully for a streetscape beautification project. But we got a lot going on right now. So we'll get to that in September.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Okay, let's get back to our regular scheduled program, which is the rest of our committee reports. So greening, Deb, do you have anything you want to report?
I do. Hi, everyone. A few weeks ago, Tammy and I met with the garden chairs, and we had just an open discussion about several things. We discussed increasing the garden membership from $25 to $40 annually. There hasn't been an increase for many years, and the cost of materials has increased dramatically. And the garden chairs each are struggling and with the funding currently, and we think it's necessary to make that adjustment. I realize that we're going to need to have approval from the board for this. So before I make a motion, does anybody have any questions for discussion?
Yeah, isn't it $30 already? So you're going from 30 to 40, not 25 to 40.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, just,
Sorry
so it's
about
not
that.
as big an increase as it sounds. Just for the
Correct.
record.
Does anybody have any questions for Deb in regards to this increase from the board? Anybody? No, Deb.
Maybe the question is like, do the gardeners get to have a say about it? Like, are they being asked what their opinion is?
Katie, we asked in South Street Garden, and unanimously people support this increase to $40 each. Like almost whoever responded, they said yes.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Secret.
You're welcome.
Anything else? All right, then I'll make a motion to increase the garden membership fee from $30 to $40 annually. Any
second.
objections?
A second.
All in favor? Drew, do you have that? Is Drew there?
There, you
Yeah,
count.
sorry, I was just looking, oh, Casey, okay. Casey,
Okay, sorry,
okay,
thank-
thumbs up. Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we also had talked about planning a few activities that would provide an opportunity to the community to come into the garden. And see what's going on there. And one of the things that we did talk about was the possibility of having someone come into the garden and talk about a topic, perhaps somebody with expertise regarding a topic of interest to gardeners, maybe a master gardener. So if any of you or any of the community knows anybody who might be willing and interested in doing this, it would be great if they would email me and we could have a chat further about that. And we also talked about the possibility of writing some grants. So it is possible that the garden chairs might be in contact with us with proposed grants for some major repairs. Leanne or Casey, did you have anything that you wanted to mention about tree tenders?
I was saving it for my report, but I'm happy to give it now. I don't know if I was at the last meeting. I don't know if this was already shared, but if it wasn't, we have 13 trees in our portal application queue for the fall, which is record for any individual season, not counting the COVID years where things were backed up. At least in my experience, it's a record. So really happy and thankful to all the community members who recruited applications and submitted applications for trees, and we'll be planting in November. And in the interim, we're going to be organizing a tree checker, a tree walk, which we did last year with a bunch of folks in our group to check on the health of the trees and report back to PHS there where they stand. So that's really it, but a lot of exciting work that was done to up our tree quotient that we met.
Casey, quick question. If there is a dead tree and it's an enormous dead tree, what do we do about that? There's one on 11th Street in front of the soap shop that opened up in that lot.
You
Yeah,
should
I
report
think,
it on 311.
yeah, which is what Patrick just put in the chat. Unfortunately, there's no city program that helps homeowners remove dead trees. It's all at the homeowner's expense, if I'm not totally mistaken. But 311 might be able to help.
No, so if it's a street tree, the city will remove it if it's a hazardous tree, if you put it through 311. However, they will not replace the tree. They will not repair the sidewalk, etc.
And if it's on private property land, does that apply too?
No, so if it's in someone's backyard, that does
Right.
not, that's not.
Yeah, no, this is out front on the street.
And I can confirm that I just reported a dead tree on the 1000 block of Spruce not too long ago, and it was totally dead, and it was cut down by the city. I reported at 311. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Because someone called me about it, a tree on 11th Street that's dead, and they asked me what they can do. So I appreciate that, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Casey.
I'm done.
Okay. Patrick, you wanted to talk about membership at all?
Yeah, I had a few slides. I don't have privilege to share the screen, just to acknowledge the new or renewed members. Maybe I can share my screen. I can see it now. It's very short and sweet. So we've had 18 new or renewed members in June, and one business that we just talked about during the rezoning conversation, the Linux high rise. And then as far as membership is concerned, we're still in the process of making our individual membership a little bit more clear, like we've done, I don't know if you remember, for the business membership, and that's all news because it's already posted on the website. But this is what we have right now, and we've all agreed that it is confusing and it is to be simplified. To be in agreement with what our neighbors are doing, basically the other civic associations, where they have about 5 levels. And as you can see, we have quite a few I mean, too many levels, basically. And so another proposal will be submitted, and hopefully this one will be approved, and then we can present it to the community at our next meeting. So that's what we have to do. It shouldn't be too difficult. And then basically, Katie just said it, but I could not resist because her flyers are so beautiful. And if you're not on social media, first of all, you should be, just for the sake of looking at Katie's designs for the backwash, and for the pleasure, I just want to go through them. I know she went over that, but that's coming up, you know, again, this weekend is the back day in Wash West. And I'm not doing justice because I'm going a little bit too fast. But they've been.
I skipped over the National Youth Bike Council, and I apologize to National Youth Bike Council that I skipped over them. I see it on the slide and I saw it earlier, which is a youth-led organization to try to get more young people on bikes. They are some really great young people. They were with us last year. So if you are a young person or have a young person in your household who might like to talk to some other young people about like getting on bikes, joining some group rides, and doing some good through that, come talk to the folks at National Youth Bike Council. Also, volunteers from the Bike Council are going to help with our group ride. There's a few maneuvers for doing group rides that I am like real not familiar with, but they plus our good friend Russell Ritchie, who is here with us tonight, are going to lead our bike ride through the neighborhood. Sorry, just throw that in there. Thank you.
Right, and I guess that's it for me.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Katie, again. Jonathan, do you have anything for zoning?
Just quickly, there's no meetings. Right now, there's not gonna be a meeting in July. We have no applications. And just a kind of quick recap of the zoning meeting from a couple weeks ago. The Alexander Inn presented to the community. They are likely going to purchase the new owner of the Alexander Inn is likely going to purchase the building across the street to the west of them, which has the bodega smoke shop in the ground level and a 13 to 15 unit hotel, which may or may not be operating legally. So they are going to purchase that building most likely and make it part of the Alexander Inn. They will be presenting to the community in several months. They will still need a variance for that, and there's actually a little bit of a tricky legal issue that we'll have to get into, because we will certainly grant them that variance if they requested, but we would only grant it to them. So we need to make certain that if this fails and the hotel were to be sold, that it couldn't be sold as a 15-unit hotel. So will be a little bit of trickiness on the civics end, but I'm sure we can get through it. And that's all I have.
Fantastic. Anyone else on the board that wants to discuss anything else? Marissa, did you have anything you wanted to discuss?
I do not, but thank you for asking.
Just making sure.
Thank you.
I'll leave you out. Okay, is there anything from the public that they want to talk about before we adjourn this meeting? Because we're running over a little bit tonight. Everyone's good. I love it when everyone's good. That's a good thing. So remember, there is no board meeting in August. No board meeting in August. So we pick back up in September. So stay tuned for everything that's going to be happening. And this Sunday, please go to Con Park. It starts at 9, right, Katie? 10, starts at 10, sorry.
That's okay. I mean, you can come at 9, but we won't be ready. So 10 to 1.
I had a question, Tammy.
Sure, go ahead.
Lynn Kirschenbaum. I've been bothered by that building at 1016 Pine, which had a fire. It used to be a hairdresser years ago. And I called 311, but they said that unless it's imminently dangerous. They're not going to do anything about it, but it's been an eyesore for a long time. Does anybody have any ideas of what we can do about that building as far as influencing them to do something?
Jonathan, are you still on? Oh,
Yeah, I'm looking at the 1016, you said 1016 Pine Street, Lynn?
Right. It's the one that used to be, it was a hairdresser and then they moved out and then it had a fire. And but that was so many years ago. It had brown paper on the windows and now that's falling
Yeah,
down.
it looks pretty bad. And yeah, I'm looking at, yeah, and the frames are pretty, we can reach out to councilman and see what we can find out about that. Yeah, the property is definitely in pretty poor shape. So let's see what we'll see what we can follow up on that for you, Lynn.
Okay, thanks, John.
I was gonna say that's exactly the kind of situation we want to help address with this pending, hopefully, surely it's gonna happen, street beautification project. Lynn, when we come up to it and other members of the community, we've had some community volunteers who already walked around and identified a lot of spaces that sort of look like that.
This
and
is
we'll-
understand. This is much worse than that. This
Oh,
is
is
an
it?
abandoned building.
Oh,
This is
okay.
not that. Understanding what you're talking about is very important to the community, but this is effectively an abandoned building.
Oh, the Google Map Street View looks all right. That must be old.
Oh no, the one I'm looking at, 1016, looks pretty bad.
Okay. But anyway, okay, sorry then.
Okay, anything else? I'm also trying to address trash in the neighborhood. It seems to be getting worse and worse. I don't know what's happening. So Deb, I'm gonna ask that you and I meet in regards to Center City District to see what they're cleaning, because Spruce Street has been, Patrick, near your home actually, or a block down below, or down below you, has just been ravaged with trash in the past few weeks. So we need to find out what's going on with the cleaning service from Center City District in regards to Spruce Street. I'm actually having a meeting with the councilman and sanitation about Locust Street, because it is a huge eyesore on my block. Especially since they took the Big Belly away. People are putting more trash where the Big Belly was now more than ever. I just don't even understand.
But Tammy, one thing to note that always does happen is June is always terrible, because that's when you always get student move out. So student move out's always a mess, right? Because they just throw everything on the street and leave. So not that that's an excuse, but that is one of the unfortunate annual events.
Yeah, but that's not what's happening in my block. I can tell you that right now. It has nothing to do with students. It could be happening more on Spruce Street,
Tammy,
but I don't know.
just one note. So part of my walk is going down Spruce Street. So I have been diligently sending issues to 311. I've even contacted Farouk because there was one, it was right, I believe it was, I don't know, it either was after the 4th of, I think it was the 4th of July week. They totally missed several block pickup of just regular trash. So I reported that. So I think it's really, I mean, Tammy and I and others can help with this, but I think by everybody working together and notifying 311 is really critical. And I've seen a result because of that. But again, I think as Jonathan was saying, with this whole move out, it just seemed like a nightmare this time. It was really, really disgusting. So we can just, 311 is one avenue, and Center City, they do come by. I have seen them, but I'm not sure they're going to pick up bags and loose, trash and open trash bags. I thought their responsibility was more picking up what can be swept. I could be wrong, but
Well, let's-
I don't know, something to discuss, I suppose.
Let's get clarification on it because I've had so many people sending me messages about Spruce Street right now.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So I want to figure out what we can do with that. We can get the sanitation department out there and putting out information again on how trash is supposed to be put out and when it's supposed to be put out. Because I don't know if the owners of these buildings are not telling their residents about trash and how it's supposed
I
to be
don't know.
disposed of. But I mean, we got to get a handle on this because I have never seen our neighborhood this disgusting. And it's just really bad and I'm appalled by it. I truly am.
But Tammy, I would also add to your point, I would be very interested in understanding how, frequently the Center City District comes around. We do pay them quite a bit of money every week that they clean. So, I sit on a street. We're right here on a corner that gets a lot of activity, and we can pretty much see when they come by, and it's not that frequently. And sometimes it's on a Wednesday when our trash day is on a Thursday. So I'd be curious, are they doing the full neighborhood both Wednesdays and Thursdays, or are they, I'd be interested in seeing to try to solve some of those problems as well.
Leanne, I'll reach out to CCD and see what's going on with that. I know that it is somewhere in my emails, I have a schedule. I'll have to go back and revisit that. It's not a specific schedule. And it is, it's over a day or two that they get to our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But I will express a concern and just see what's going on, because I totally agree. We do pay a lot of money and it is important. But the other thing too is just to emphasize that
No, I totally agree.
311 issue is it can be helpful, but if we don't report it, it's, and be a pest about it, sometimes things don't happen. So
I agree, but we also need to really get with CCD and even
Yep.
walk through again on what are they doing and how are they doing it and what streets are they actually on, and making sure they're on the correct streets that they're supposed to be cleaning. Because again, I've never seen it this bad, and we need to get a handle on it before something happens.
Deb, can you give a quick overview? Peter, I believe, asked in the question, what do we pay? Do you have a quick summary of what streets are in our contract?
well, it's all of Wash West. It's Locust Street is already is considered part of CCD. So that's been done. So it's everything south, that east of Broad Street to South Street and to 7th Street. So it's those typical boundaries that they do. The issue is that you can't get a specific answer on a day and a time frame that they're going to be walking these streets.
Right.
It's impossible I cannot get that, but I will go back in emails and I will touch base with them again. And I will let them know that it's a persistent problem and we need some more clarification for sure.
Yeah, and maybe there's a opportunity for, some type of log or check-in or some type of system or something. Peter, it's every other week that we pay them to clean.
Yeah, and we only pay them if they clean it. If it's raining and they don't go out, or snowing or something, then they don't charge us. And they're supposed to do it the 2 days over the neighborhood because the trash is picked up over 2 days. So they're supposed to go out the day of your street that the trash is picked up. Of course, part of their scheduling problem is if trash doesn't pick up till 4 o'clock and their crew comes through at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, or it doesn't always work out the way it's supposed to. That trash comes through at 7 and they come through at 10. Or recycling doesn't pick up at all. There's a lot of things that go wrong that are kind of beyond their control. Not to make excuses, but
right. But
there's a plan, but it doesn't always work as it's supposed to.
Do they send you a log, Bob, of when
No, they just send just send the bill, and I don't even think we got, they just send a bill that just says that the 2 days that they were out or the 3 days if it's a longer month.
But we don't know for sure that they came out due to the weather. They
No,
charged-
we have no way of verifying whether they actually did it or didn't do it. If we can, all I can do is go by the bill and whether it's charged or not.
So the bill fluctuates?
Yeah, it fluctuates depending on, in the summer, they almost never miss so the main fluctuation is whether it was 2 or 3 pickups in the month, but in the wintertime, I think it does fluctuate.
All right, we need to get a better handle on this. Patrick, go ahead.
No, very quickly. So the cleaning map that Deb, you had sent a year ago in an email to us, it's a little bit more gerrymandered than just being south of a local street. And to, for example, the block close to Broad is part of CDD, and so it's not a clear-cut map. What they have to clean for us, and so what you had sent, I'm sure you can send it again, Deb, was very informative for me. Just looking, yeah, and
it was all covered. Wash West was all covered for sure.
Yeah, it was all covered. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was all
Yeah.
covered either by the CDD. Or by us, contracting them, but there's a bit of gerrymandering about the CDD boundaries in Wash West. That's what I was trying to mention. Yeah, and also to your point, Tammy, I think we need to held responsible the management companies.
Yes.
And I've had I've 2 management companies on each side of my house, and I've been on their case, forever. Who knows what they communicate to their renters? If I mean, we are all responsible, I believe, but they have to be as responsible as we are.
Agreed. Drew, did you have a question? Because now your hand's down.
Yeah, I don't want to drag this on forever, but I mean, we went through this when we re-signed the contract with the
we did.
CCD, and we couldn't, I mean, maybe now it's just enough is enough, because it's supposed to cover all of Wash West, but I've never seen them on any street. I see Clinton Street every week because we pay for it separately. I don't know where they are, what they're doing, when it rains, and I don't think anybody really does. And they refuse to be held accountable or say what they do, when they do, are they doing it every week? So I think we've spent enough time sort of chatting about this that we got to elevate it, and I'm happy to participate in that.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
I was just going to say to a couple people's points here about students, maybe one sort of easy thing to do would be to send a letter on Wash West letterhead to our local schools to ask their students to do better, or to provide more trash receptacles for them, or I don't know, help get them to deal with their students.
Right, but if they're just renting from somebody, the school would have nothing to do with that. Do you know what I mean?
True, but I still think it may be worth talking to them, because if they can, or if we can even provide the students some sort of resources, like this is who you call when you need to get rid of this thing, or this is how you properly dispose of a mattress. If we can get the school to give those resources out at school, maybe just a suggestion.
That's why I wanted the sanitation department to go around again like they're supposed to and give out information and talk to people about sanitation and how it's supposed to be disposed of. So but the schools are fine too. I have no problem sending and talking with them also. All right, everybody good? Thank
Sorry,
you.
one more quick question. This is Lynn again. Do we have a master list of management companies or building owners or something like that we can send to? No, we don't.
There actually is no such thing, because we've already asked the city for something like that and they don't have it even. So
and the problem is, Lynn, we have lists of all the properties, but like every property is owned by some LLC or something, and they're all separate. So it's almost impossible to kind of find like a central, group.
But that said, we have major players in this neighborhood, and we know who they are because their signs are always hanging, on the facade of their properties. So I think if we already reach out to maybe 4 or 5 of these major players, maybe we can have a bit of an impact.
It tends not to, unfortunately, it tends to be the one-offs or the people who own 2 or 3 properties are the bigger problems. Usually if you have enough properties, you need to play by the rules, but.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Not in my neighborhood.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great summer, and we'll see you all on Sunday.
Thank you.